Hotel. Feel like show you right, Reverend Preacher up here. This is all right, Brother Brad. I really appreciate you all sticking in to allow Brother to get to share some information with you. This is a mission, this particular trip I've had to pull off on my own, and basically that means I do all the spots, and there's a lot of things to do before a lecture. And Brother's really kind of exhausted. We've just about our 4th program in 6 days, and Brother's pretty tired. And in between those times when I'm speaking with you, many of you call me and we talk every minute from when I get through talking. And I work, I do my contemplating and research between about 4 and 6 in the morning, and usually about that time, about 7, I go back to bed. Well, I guess everybody gets up about that time, so the calls start coming, and I can't unplug this phone. So, and I'm here for you. I asked you to call, so we talk all the time between then, and I really haven't had, how you doing, Brother Stan? Haven't had much of a voice today. This is about as good as it's been all day, so I really appreciate you hanging in. We'll need some amplification here, but the acoustics sound pretty good. But I really appreciate coming here with African Minds United to this spot. Brothers are very proud of this. I'm very proud to see this. This is really, this is an individual's effort in the spirit of a group, and this is really neat to see the brothers get together to put something together like this, to be able to have programming and other things. And I really appreciate seeing this effort. It's very impressive, and I really appreciate you all for stepping forward to try to advance the available entities that the community can deal with. I really wish Washington, D.C., Chicago, and other places were more accessible to the people. In some of these towns, they've been able to lock you out of houses in a way that they've stifled the progression of the community. And if you knock the radio off and you knock off the meeting locations, now you've got a full court press against dialogue. Most often people trivialize dialogue, but the question remains, if it's so trivial, why is there so much time spent trying to stop it? If Khallid Muhammad is just a big blabbermouth, why spend any time trying to shoot him? If all these ideas are outlandish and so spiritedly hateful, then God wouldn't sanction such work, and the devil surely wouldn't want it either, since he white. And so where would a black man go? They should be like a dinosaur, rendered useless, and no one would even care about what was said. But that's not the case. The case really is that probably more than ever before in our community, we become focused at a core of an enemy. In the past, we have really gone through phases of black power, phases of economic insurgence, small-scale mercantilism. A cultural explosion, a book boom. These things we had on a level like we've never had before. And it really has confused the enemy, because on one hand, we are far more clear and focused and personally initiated. I always say in the protocols it mentions the goal is to stop personal initiative. See, this is personal initiative. This is personal initiative. There is no guideline or boundary or set defined way. You do what you can do. It's personal initiative. Brother Keedy puts his work out. That's personal initiative. Brother Jamal has gone to his own business. That's personal initiative. These are the chemistry of a revolution, and it's not necessarily acknowledged by the enemy, but never before have we been that focused, but simultaneously never before have we been so laid back. And so you've got these confusing signals. Whites are not reading us appropriately. When the rebellion came, whites were shocked, and they put back the anti-crime programs at the time when they were going down, and every Democrat was trying to out-Republic a Republican for cracking down on young black kids. When the rebellion came, all that moved backwards. And that meant that an incident could do what our organizations are not able to do. And that's to instantly incite the masses to move. And I mentioned to you in the riot report that the unusual circumstance of the last rebellion was that many whites were beat just for being white. And that in some cases in Atlanta, good whites were beaten. Announced in the paper, I was a good white and I got beat. And no one was asking, which white were you? And that was very important. That was a unique development. Whites attacked the police station in LA. I didn't see many brothers down there the night they was at the Parker Center jumping on the telephone booths and jumping on the police cars. If you look back at that film, you see little white kids. And the point of that is that there was a great underestimation about the combustion of the people. So then, understanding that, there was a need to suppress the dialogue, because the dialogue prepares for the action. So we found another level of attack on black radio all across the country. Is what you're figuring here is you're getting there. And all this is relevant when a brother like Khallid steps up to the plate, and having been castigated and ostracized by whites, another unique phenomenon in the past, when whites attacked the brothers or the sisters, one was fearful and hurt and ostracized effectively by an attack by whites, and that's no longer so. Attack by whites will in fact legitimize and better galvanize one's approach to the enemy, because it's an honor to be attacked. And I remember this old Khallid story we tell about being at, we were in Atlanta, and we were looking at the ADL report on anti-Semitism, and in the report, Khallid had a couple of paragraphs in it, and he was kind of pissed off, damn, you got a section, Coakley, and the brother minister got a section, and Jeffries got a section, I ain't got no section. And he said, my son is going to ask me one day, said, Dad, why you only got 2 paragraphs in this book? And I kidded him when we were at the Black Holocaust meeting in Washington that, well, now in the next report, he'll get his chapter. And there'll be a Khallid chapter being renounced by the Senate and the House, and on down the line, there will be a place for him in anti-Semitic literature. And but in the past, a black man would be worried about such stigmatization. Now, it's a badge of honor, and no one no longer worries about what the whites think, as long as the brothers and sisters do what they're supposed to do. It will make no difference what the whites do. In those moments where the whites are able to intercede or have access, planes, trains, certain levels of transportation, and other things that we cannot provide for ourselves, then we become vulnerable to them on a certain level. I mentioned very clearly that if you saw the Donahue show that Brother Khallid did, it would be easily understandable why whites at a certain point would calculate that they would want to shoot him. That the Donahue show was an attitude. When they go to attack you, part of the gimmick to the attack is to break down your spirit, to make you unsure if your path is a correct path to take, and to make others throw doubt upon the validity of your work. And in that particular situation, by the time the Donahue show came, there was a little period after the first lectures, after the suspension, that Khallid had in fact toned down the lecture. Several newspapers, New York Times included, and others even made a note of a toned down presentation. And this didn't sit well with the brother as he saw the whites signal that they had succeeded in, one, getting him stigmatized, and two, that in effect he internalized the stigmatization such that he began to tone down an attack on the devil, a provable devil. And so that is on the edge, or the cutting edge of victory for the whites, and that compelled the brother to shake up. I did a tape called Confused, where I questioned whether the brother was a freedom fighter. In the period that he was responsible in the nation for coming out and saying that Coakley shouldn't be out questioning what we was doing at the African Summit, that we was meeting with them rabbis, or that we was getting with them civil rights all-stars, as Brother Coakley called him, said we love the brother, but we wish he'd hold back his judgment. And I kept going forward, Africa 93, Black and Jewish Relations 93, and other tapes, that I would not relinquish my analysis, since I felt mine was based on research and not emotion. And that was his job as spokesperson to come out and check me city to city, and this went on. So I did the tape called Confused, the distraction between blacks and Israelis in Chicago, where I laid down the fact that something funky was going on, and I was going to have to speak on it since I knew of it. And that's the compelling nature of the job that I have. And so eventually he and I got to talk right before the Black Holocaust meeting. And in that discussion, I understood as a brother what it meant, as he heard the tape. I'm going to tell you, all the people hear the tapes. I remember at this marketplace on Monday, I was out there, and that's the first time I got to meet Chilton Alphonse. And he wasn't at none of the lectures, but he heard the tapes, and in the tapes I raised some questions about driving Khallid around in that Rebuild LA truck. And without even me bringing it up to him, he come up to me and say, brother, I need to tell you why I was driving that truck. And I'm saying to everyone, that's weight. Now, there is no weight if you have no credibility. Or if your attempt to clarify things are dishonest or untrustworthy, then a person can shake it off no more than we shake off the whites, who are the haters who cast aspersions. But these things have weight, and people responded to the tapes. From watching this brother on Monday, there were several people around to witness him telling me why he wasn't at Riverside, and I didn't ask him any of them things. All I said was, glad to meet you, brother. But he had heard the tapes. He responded to the tapes. Brother Khallid had heard the Confused tape. And that made him want to reach out for me and say, brother, I want you to know, deep in my heart, I'm a hardcore revolutionary, and I want to prove that to you and all the other black people who over the years have assisted me. And that was something that was shaking it, and he was in the process of that whole lecture program starting to re-intensify. And if you saw that Black Holocaust film, you know he went all over the stage. He got at all those people who for many months he had to defend against me. The situation didn't change, but people victimized. Now since then, here come Khallid, here come Ben Chavis. All that alliance, Coakley was alleging was a bad relationship, have proved itself to still be bad because it's still casting bad perceptions amongst the community, and it's not progressed us, it's sort of depressed us. And so there's weight and there's response. And in that Confused tape, I had to speak to things I felt uncomfortable about. And if brother and I had not gotten together there right before that Holocaust program and kind of reconstituted our brotherhood, then I never would have come out here when the assassination came down to try to get to the bottom of the brother's discrepancies related to his assassination attempt, because there wouldn't have been the spirit of brotherhood to keep us together, to make me feel like it was worthy of that. I ain't come out here to do no OJ one. I ain't got no OJ analysis up here, because there's no weight to make me believe this is a brother that if we saved him, we get something back. These are judgments that have to be made. These are judgments that have to be made. And so that's how I got in this position of being the one to go back and do the research. Those tapes, I did several lectures, and I didn't even get a chance to make all of the various ones that I had made over those 5 different lectures on the Khallid assassination that I did when I was here. I just kind of used 2 or 3 of them, or even one of them when I'm traveling. But each and every one of those discussions that we had here in LA, where people in the audience were at those various scenes, contributed to a great body of work that many of the people in and around the event listened to better understand things that they saw go around them. And then that compelled them to contact me to help me better understand the things I was trying to translate from not having been there, but just taking information. And there's a whole thing about what do you do when these things happen? What methodology is available to us as a community without a court, without an investigating squad, that we have to go forth and establish facts to the best of our ability and enter those facts into the arena to try to compel the behavior to change. And the analysis, the accumulation of all of the various angles, and Brother Khallid and Brother Jamal going to the scene and being able to pick up information right on the scene of the hole in the fence and the cut on the trees and the second or the primary shooting scene. And these are very important things done on people's own personal initiative. For a sister to come out and contradict the public perception that was being fed by the police that Best didn't have a criminal record. Another person coming out and verifying that it was not Khallid who had fired him in the nation, so it wasn't revenge for being fired. It was Brother Wazir who had set him down, not Brother Khallid. That was a false excuse. And that was a motive that they got off of Best while Best was still unconscious. Immediately it was that Khallid had suspended him, therefore I went to shoot him. That's not true. And many of those things were dealt with by the people, and by the 4th day of that, there was no more news. That was the end of the story. When the hole in the fence got busted and the police talked all stupid and came out with a phony, they had a phony crime scene that they drew, and Brother Khallid went up and drew a more accurate crime scene. And now the issue is passed, the court thing is coming up, Best and pled not guilty. So now what happens? What does all this mean? That means that whoever was in on it, if it was a conspiracy, are still out walking around. And that means that we always have to have an insurance mechanism, and sometimes that means we have to take some proactive responsibility to make sure it don't happen again. And sometimes the only way you can prevent certain bad behavior is that you retaliate against it. And that those things be based on evidence which the hunkies are no depository of. No more are any of the stakeholders. This ended up in an independent body. And that's what we need. This has brought up another question about we need independent bodies to dispense justice. We've always talked about, since my first AMU trip, about the elders presiding in a court so that we can deal with disputes between each other to prevent escalation of violence or to bring violence once judgment has been made. Or any other form of punishment. It didn't have to even be violent. But it could be anything. And so I appreciate having an opportunity to dibble back in here quick. I wanted to make sure that I got to those things that were new and different from the time that we spoke last. And I do, Brother Nkrumah, have some information here on the, I don't know if you all have a copy machine here? Well, you'll have to holler out. I don't want to get into that, but the resolution about the economic sanctions. You know, last night we talked about Africa and the sellout of Africa, etc. This is an article I forgot to bring that was in Omni, dated, oh shit, I got to cover this. I think this is Omni about 2 Omnis ago. Writing off Africa as the world reorganized, one continent gets left behind. March 94 Omni. First word, and it's about the whole, yeah, we getting ready to jam up Africa dialogue. And I'll pass this around. Those of you can look at it. It's relentless in the dialogue about what they're going to do. Anyway, that was last night's dialogue. Just a little follow-up, too, on something. I remember one time I mentioned that Dick Gregory had been involved in some ADL activity, and someone had said in one particular show he denied knowing anything about that. For the record, you could ask Mr. Gregory, were you or were you not involved in the Great American Traditions Award given by the Anti-Defamation League, the B'nai B'rith International Anti-Defamation League? Were you not a special speaker on that program, and were you not on the fundraising committee for that particular program, of which the tickets cost $175 a plate? Says the proceeds from this $175 plate dinner will assist the B'nai B'rith, the oldest voluntary service organization founded in America, in sustaining its multifaceted youth services. It will also enable the organization to support programs dedicated to the enhancement of human relations. Mr. Gregory, were you or were you not involved in the Great American Traditions Award program as a fundraiser for the ADL that gave an honor to Douglas Wilder? For the record, and they get the tape, they can put it to him just precisely. I would like to hear him respond on the record specifically to that specific question. Somebody gave me this flyer the other night from Cal State Northridge, responding to anti-Semitism on campus. It's a whole series of forums being headed by the, right, Sister Lisa, by the Jewish Studies program, Professor Jody Myers, coordinator of the Jewish Studies program at Cal State Northridge. And the reason I bring this up, wonder how to deal with name-calling and stereotyping. Claims like, quote, the Jews control the media. Jamal, you showed me an article that was in the LA Times here about the new power brokers in LA, and I think there were many, I don't know what religion these people are, but I think we do know that they are white, always first primarily, and just for the record, since they won't know how to deal with this, they say you got to burn the LA Times when it comes out on Tuesday. Burn the book, How the Jews Invented Hollywood. Burn the book, and burn the book, deny the article even when we wrote them. Picturing America's true power structure. It's a whole series of whites who are considered the, from Edgar Bronfman at Seagram's to Bill Gates at Microsoft, to Michael Eisner at Disney, to Ortiz at that big company, CAA chairman Michael Ortiz. A whole series of young white men, predominantly of the, I don't know what religion they are, but it sounds like they got names of the Jewish religion. Yeah, there you go. Whatever his name is, you know who I'm talking about. And this is LA Times, dated September 6, 1994. So the thing says, how do you deal with how the Jews controlled the slave trade? How do you deal with the accusations of a Jewish conspiracy, much of which I've been accused of perpetrating? How do you deal with offensive ethnic humor? the CSUN's Jewish Studies Program in cooperation with the Anti-Defamation League is running workshops concerning these challenges. This is what Dick Gregory helped produce. Just to be clear. When to talk and when and how to walk away, how to have an honest dialogue, how to respond to people who distort history, basic facts and myths about Jews, why prejudice persists, with a series of workshops called Holocaust Denial, Black-Jewish Tensions, Confronting and Understanding Anti-Semitism. Well, these forums start on the 6th. They're open to the public, and I highly recommend starting at October 6th at Lindley Hall, room number 1486, that many of you should go there. You should be there, and hopefully we could have our cameras there and get reaction, because when we show up, it's always action.
Also, I'm pretty sure that the Black Student Union is going to be there. I heard the information that they've already got the flyer, they've already started to organize a little pilgrimage out, or a little going out there. I'll have some more flyers. Keep in contact with AMU. Any information that I might have. Yet I also do recommend that we go out there and support them.
That's right. October 6th is the first one. October 13th is the second one, and November 2nd is the third one. Sister Lisa can refer you specifically as to when and where, the times, etc. But this thing is, pardon me? I said we could get into that later. And in fact, I guess I should say this since it's an odd time, 2 o'clock in the afternoon for the October 6th one. 2 o'clock in the afternoon for October 13th, and 11 a.m. on Wednesday, November 2nd. The other two are on Thursdays. Anyway, she'll take care of that, I'm sure. My purpose is to keep it in the record. Once it goes into the record, I mentioned to you that the record has weight. So when whoever's here carries the word that Copley said, we're going to the meeting, that put weight on the meeting, and the meeting might get canceled. So when we was going to Boulay to ask the questions, they moved the question and answer session 3 blocks down, and it never even had it. So sometimes weight can do things, and we don't want to miss that. And since we're on the subject of how to stop a Jewish conspiracy or ethnic, anti-ethnic dialogue, let's enter into the record, the Daily News, Monday, July 10th, 1994. I found the rest of those articles, Brother Jamal. I know you anxiously love this. Gem of a scam. FBI targets cartel. Cash laundering in Diamond District. Says all the big-time drug dealers go to the Diamond District to wash the drug money, because in the exclusively Hasidic, closed-knit, not openly observed Diamond area, there is plenty room for laundering of cash, since even the U.S. government doesn't have a good handle on the gem trade. And I made 3 copies of the tape, Diamonds, Jewish People in South Africa. And remember, in the process of the diamonds, De Beers gives them diamonds in a box and don't even let them open them until after they sold it to them. So they specifically control the quality of your gems, and how you cut your gems has a lot to do with what value is in them. So there's a lot of untraceable money. And so it makes a good spot for the drug trade. And there were a series of articles in New York dealing with Jewish laundering of drug money, and they were suppressed. Just like the ADL story ran in San Francisco and LA, but outside of this for many, many months, it was suppressed. And that's where our wire service comes in.
Check.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. I know it's late. And see, one thing about being here, ain't no time limit. So how long can y'all hang? I know y'all tired. It took a while for me to get here, so I'm waking up now. So if y'all can stand it, we're gonna make it clear. But you gotta tell me all right, because when y'all get tired, I'm gonna get tired. I'm gonna be tired. I gotta get up about 3 o'clock in the morning. I'll be real tired. I plan just not to go to bed, so we'll get on with it. FBI targets cartel. Suspected money laundering in dark suit was captured on FBI surveillance film with a suitcase full of cash. See page 5. Show you right. Diamonds and drugs. Feds say Jim Biz laundries cash. Get a nice shot of them headlines. This is getting that video. It'll get all over the country. They may have missed the news, but we'll get it in there. Fed agents flood 47th Street to fight money laundering. There's several of these articles, and I'll make sure I leave access to these here. These are written by Tom Lowry. There's another one by this guy Hernandez. It's a series of articles. There are several of these. This is in the Daily News, January 10th, 94. This particular one, I showed another one the other night just to enter it into the record. Rabbis laundered money. This one is April 29th, 1994, with a series of drug routes examined, the laundering locations, the process by which they went through laundering the funds, and and it mentions about, as Brother Jamal mentioned last night, Abraham Lowe, a Satmar rabbi from the prestigious Mogan Abraham Synagogue in Los Angeles. Right. One of the most, yeah, it was in LA Times, right. One of the most prestigious rabbis here in Los Angeles was the Cocaine Triangle. All right. Now, the reason I say that is it's not only that it's cocaine, but it's religious cover. A religious cover. That's why when they always ask me, is this a Jewish conspiracy, I always try to be clear about pinning religious connotations on evil activities. I mean, if you don't act religious-like, I ain't gonna get hung up in trying to call you a religious name. You're the beast. You're well foretold. Anyway, Nightmare of a Dream, Nightmare or the Dream, a new era of genetics. It's talking about an ambitious attempt to eliminate common recessive diseases from their community. A group of Orthodox Jews in New York and Israel are using the most advanced molecular technology to screen young people considering marriage. It's a project that elicits strong emotions from geneticists and ethnicists who say that it is the fruit of a new genetic era. Others say we're on the verge of a nightmare. The leaders of the program, called Dor Yoshorim, Hebrew for the generation of the righteous, say that it can serve as a model for the nation. It does not rely on prenatal testing because abortions are generally unacceptable to Orthodox Jews, nor does it advise couples to avoid having children if they're at risk at passing on the inherited disorders. Anyway, it goes on to some details, and 8,000 have been tested so far. This is New York Times, December 7th, 1993. Diamond Empire, Minds of Real Truth, and some more. The genesis of a new rap form, Blood of Abraham, circulates Hebrocentrism in hip-hop system. And there's some whole dialogue about saying some anti-black things. By the way, the God you pray to is a black Jew. Oh, here we go. The blood of Abraham, a black Jew. And at the Nation of Islam, and it's a hip-hop sympathizes on the niggas and the Jews. The man is a devil, but the devil ain't a Jew, so tell me who the F you're referring to. It just goes on with some blacks and Jews have the most in common, and we're the most separated. Anyway, it's just that they're moving into emulating certain things in a way of trying to use it for their own advantage. If you remember, the big rabbi in New York died recently. And when the rabbi in New York died, the governor of New York, as well as the mayor of New York, came out and put funds up to give psychological counseling free to any Jewish person who was mentally unstabilized by the rabbi's death, because the rabbi said he never died. This is the state to provide counseling if rabbi dies. Well, he died. And this is March 22nd, 94. You know, it's a big discussion about this. You have to watch these things carefully. Just like the new head rabbi in Israel for the first time in many, many years have been a Sephardim. And that versus an Ashkenazi is an interesting development. Yes, brother. And then I'll go back to you, Brother Keith.
Just to validate what you just said about the breakdown of some of these Jews behind this rabbi dying. At that time, I was in New York, and my cousin that I was staying with lived right across the street from the cemetery where he was buried. And they were coming in at all hours of day and night just to make sure that, you know, the grave was still intact, he was still there. And one night I got up about midnight, and you could hear him walking down the street, because they're crying when they're walking down the street, okay? And I just drove by. He had a little flashlight, and I just flashed, because his grave is not that far from the street. And man, they're down there on their knees, crying, and, you know, just breaking down. 12 o'clock midnight. Is he coming back?
That's interesting. That's interesting. All right. Now, the reason I did that was to kind of set the climate about some things, because very often we're defending behavior. I'm defending my right to meet with this one. I'm defending my right to meet with that one. Enough of this. Let's get on the offense. There's enough information available to start telling on the people who always want to tell on somebody else. Part of their oversaturation is to hide many of their own inadequacies. So we just got to step up our offense and quit getting pushed into the defensive mechanism by the unfit. Don't forget the tape up there on the Boule convention. We had a good tape. There's a lot of masonry in that tape from the other night. I recommend it. Oh yeah, you might want to take a look at this. This is the program from the Boule convention. I don't know if you saw it the other night. I passed it around the auditorium, but it's got some thanks, brother. It's got some interesting information in it. What about the other question? Somebody take care of it? Okay, thank you. Now, let me go back to the climate with you. Let's go back to something. Now the time has passed a little bit. I was able to better look at this. Oh, yes, say yes. You know, get it aside. You know, Steve, it's that. Man, you know what? I tell you all, every time I read this assassination stuff, it takes a lot out of me. Every time I go do this Khallid thing, it takes a lot out of me. It's hard going back through an attempted shooting, and it's hard to know the people still around. It's hard to be the one standing up saying it, dropping lines that encrypt something. I know there's an echo on my phone. A sister called me today, and she said, damn, I picked up the phone and didn't even dial, and I could just blow in the phone and hear a blowing, echoing. There's about a 4 ring on this phone. Now, every time I pick up that phone and call, it's just the same problem even being in a hotel, and every time you make a call, your call comes out on that little call list. You have to get up and walk down the street and use a phone and walk 3 blocks to another phone or pick an odd phone just to get a call off to move from here to there to say this and to say that. And it's just a critical thing you have to keep your eye on, but there's so many ways for us to incriminate ourselves in our own strategy that you really have to go to a great extent to avoid. I try not to incriminate people or friends of mine by calling them on my own phone. Make somebody spend some time after I'm leaving trying to establish what's your relationship with me. Because if you check any of the old COINTEL profiles and what they was looking at, what they was doing, they take something like that and spend a month after you're gone trying to figure out who all of them numbers are. And sometimes you can just avoid putting that on somebody. And then you call all the people who you don't like. Call them up and tell them how much you love them and shit. What a key area of support they're providing. How you couldn't have made it if they hadn't helped you out and shit. You do that. You do that for the ones you don't like. And that's very important to keep your heads up. And remember, they very rarely catch anybody. Usually you tell on yourselves. And so we have to not be weak. And from the stage last night, when a brother identifies himself as knowing something, Sister Tammy right away said, and where do you work? And what do you do, brother? And I had to stop the process. Because she'd do it right from that point. It didn't take no moment to stop, well, let me form a picture around this. And I was very intrigued by listening. It was good to listen. So sometimes you have to listen to even know how to deal with something. And I listened again back to those things. I listened carefully to certain words. I met with the CIA. How many of you in here have ever met with the CIA? So I'm saying that that's such a rare thing to then stand up in a room full of people and to say it and to believe that that doesn't further incriminate you is psychotic. Or you believe that your squad is winning so well, you know, you really don't have to care what you think. So you have to listen and feel for arrogance too. And it could be that she's a very talented person, hung up in a lot of things that look real nice, and is sensationalizing the feel of being around different levels and things. But that ain't no thing to play with when you start getting into that. So y'all look out for the sister. All right, now, this climate of the things going on.
Brother, could I add one thing to it?
Yes, oh yeah, brother, because I did want to call on you. You had your hand up.
Yeah, well, the earlier point I want to make was talking about the cocaine and the Jewish people.
Oh, and here's that story on the rabbi, too. 1/12/93, LA Times, rabbi doctor arrested in elaborate fraud scheme. A third person is also charged with setting up money laundering networks said to involve charities. 1/12/93, LA Times, for the record. Thank you, Brother Keith.
And it is a former Mossad agent by the name of Michael Herrera, who was a top lieutenant to Manuel Noriega and actually slipped out within 24 hours of the U.S. invasion of Panama. Michael Herrera, a former Mossad agent, is the one believed to have set up the Khallid cocaine cartel in Colombia. Now, the point I wanted to make that was just reminded about last night, what she was describing, I went home and I was reading a new book by the Information Project for Africa called The Control of People.
And they're talking exactly, there's 4 stages to the Western financial empire gaining control of your country. There's 4 stages. The first stage is get you to increase your exports, massively increase exports. Second stage, get you to use external financing for increasing exports. Third stage is structural adjustment programs. And the 4th stage is to then control your population. And so she was describing stage 1, getting these exports started.
Right, and in fact, I looked up in my old pile, found NAACP economic link to South Africa. It may be a whole group of these people involved. This might actually be a covert action project. Again, in the earlier South African tapes, I identified specific articles where, and it's in Africa 93, where the whites say, well, okay, now that we got this squared away, let's get right down to that money. And now it's to distort anyone's interest in any of the other things that have really not been resolved. And so that might be a covert action project in itself to redefine the prioritization of issues. And saying, well, crime in the black community is the #1 problem, rather than the unequal distribution of wealth, which has 0.1% of the population controls 72% of the money. That's the problem. But they redefine the problem and identify it as a black crime problem, rather than that black crime is a symptom like poor housing and other things of unequal distribution of wealth. And we have to be able to better arm ourselves in responding to these false perceptions, because that is covert action. You will underestimate covert action. That is covert action. Unemployment statistics, covert action. As soon as you come off the last week, you ain't counted no more. You're still unemployed. That's covert action statistic. It provides a false reading of a situation, and everyone supports the perpetration of the falseness. And that everybody kind of rides with it together. Anyway, you're right, it may be a part of a larger project that's going on. Now, there have been a series of articles, but several of those I don't want you to miss, that went down, leading in and around and up to what we need to get in the record. When I was here before, I didn't have these actual articles, so now I have them, and I have them to enter them into the record so that you can get a good idea of the period just prior to the assassination attempt. These periods are formative stages, and if you go back and study them carefully, you might find the positioning for a shooting, whereas when you're looking at just the shooting, you might miss a thing or two. As I looked very carefully, there was a rapid escalation of articles. Farrakhan, Malcolm, Summit, Khallid. This is a very important one. Cops, Muslims in mosque brawl. This is LA Times East Coast paper, Newsday, which is the Long Island paper. Now remember, Long Island is the one that voted overwhelmingly, which is a Democrat, overwhelmingly Democratic, voted overwhelmingly for Adolf or Rudy Giuliani, whatever his name is. And this is the LA Times paper. It's the predominant paper. I mean, New York Times dominates, but this is the Long Island paper. And you must know something about this attack on the mosque, which is in January, because in February things happened, in March things happened, in April things happened, and the shooting attempt was in May. And then when they went into the mosque, articles came out like this, showing the mosque in a simulated way, again, laying whites up for looking inside of something that otherwise they'd have no access to. The goal was to get inside of the mosque. Now, eventually we know from the Village Voice story and others I knew personally, but that there was a conflict between those at this mosque in New York and Brother Khallid. Of course, the Village Voice article, which eventually came out, which I could just show you the cover of. I'm going to actually get into the article as far as this is the cover of that Village Voice article, The Unholy War, Khalid Muhammad in the Battle for the Nation of Islam. In fact, that was a photograph taken in Dallas. I was standing about right where this white strip is, helping push everybody together. And Khalid says, give me some paper. Let me hold some paper in my hand. We didn't know this. A picture would end up on the Village Voice cover. Now, I don't know how many of you all saw this. How many of you all actually saw this article? See, that's the dangerous shit too, right? when shit start on one side of the country and don't make it to the other, there's something to that, because naturally shit flows. And just like dances flow. And to see it not make it across the west of the Mississippi is interesting, because the article is very volatile and discussed some rivalry between Conrad Muhammad, the minister of New York, and Khallid Muhammad. And this built up into a big level of confusion that eventually resulted in a final call article showing them coming out in unity. Again, Minister Farrakhan had to break them up from this activity a year before that and brought them on the stage together in unity, so they had to reunify again and again. But it was saying that Khalid Muhammad had predicted his assassination attempt in speeches in New York, where security had been pulled off of him, and he felt like it was an assassination of brewing. And they carried excerpts of his speech way months before the attempt. The reason I'm bringing that up is because why the police were going in a mosque where you might find information incriminating or against Khalid Muhammad. If you were able to go into this, say they came in here and said, I want everybody out, and we all walked out and left them in, then they might go looking for, well, something down in Copley's file we want to get rid of, or something in the back we want to place, and this and that. These things are done when you have control of the premises. So the goal was to get control of the premises. And this was an attack in January, and it's just a very, very interesting situation that these things unfolded the way they did. And I just wanted to get into the record. Mayhem at the mosque, that's Conrad Muhammad there. Black leaders rage over Knicks meetings. Now, Conrad Muhammad was in Ebony's, I don't know what they call them, 100 future leaders or 50 future leaders of America. And outside of Minister Farrakhan is probably the only other Muslim outside of Malcolm X or Elijah Muhammad in years past haven't had any ink in an Ebony. Double barrel test for the new mayor. That was in the first or second week in Giuliani's mayoralship. Snub puts Rudy some other, and they go and lay out the mosque and the floors in the mosque and other things, and that's a very dangerous dialogue. But the fact that they went in there is very important, probably, in the scheme of how these things hook together. There was also an article that had appeared that caused controversy. There's a major lawsuit going on over this article right now. I'm sure many of you never saw the cover of the article. This one, or actually I'll hold this one because this came out a month later. Oh, that's a good one there. Not a good one for having any validity, but the fact that the instigation was set up on that level. And that one would try something on that level. Also in January, the ad came out against Khalid Muhammad. This is the ad that the New York Times printed. This one is in fact from the Washington Jewish Week. As after they printed it in the New York Times, which cost about $50-something thousand, they then went to print it all over newspapers that they control across the country. Minister Louis Farrakhan and Nation of Islam claim they are moving towards moderation. Now, for them to declare that in an ad is a statement in itself. One claims to move towards moderation. And that's important, too, about what signals you send to the enemy and how the enemy will try to manipulate perceptions that you may or may not be actually feeding. Judgment has to be passed as to whether there is a move towards moderation. And if, in fact, whites feel that, what are the things that make them feel like someone is pledged to be more moderate? And what does moderate mean? Does it mean you won't kick the hunky in his ass when he got an ass kicking coming? What does it mean? I don't understand what it means. And of course, as you remember, in this ad of the Anti-Defamation League condemning Khallid, which started the whole attack on him, this one dated January 27th, there's a portion where in that speech in Kane College that he mentions my name, that Steve Copley was right. But right here in the ad, they put ... And he was right too. They just took my name out the ad. Now, why would they want to take out, remember I told you when you're castigating someone, it ain't always bad for you, and then to have Khallid say, and Copley says, and Professor Griff, he was right, and ... he was right too. And the brothers from New York Cemetery said, man, you better listen to this because your name was in the tape, and they just took it out. Now, why wouldn't they run me in every city in this world with their paper that I was right about something? But that only goes to show you that they spent time looking over the ad trying to make sure they didn't plus the ad. Especially since at that period, the brother and I were battling. It would be good not to make it look like he said something positive about me, because the reason I got the tapes was that brother sent them to me and said, Brother Khallid said some very good things about you, and this is before the King College speech was controversial. So this is in December, and I didn't even listen to the tape. He just said some good things. I said, okay, I'll put it to the side. And it wasn't until the ad came out they actually put the tape on and found out what was in the ... And he also mentions De Beers and the diamond mines and Oppenheimer. That's all in the same ad. And of course, we're talking about the same connections. Anyway, so that also was in January with the raid on the mosque. And again, that'd be important for the fact that these were pre-assassinations. Now, this is New York Times, February 1st. Now, there's a whole series of articles. For the record, if you were to go look, you'd find a whole series of articles of repudiation of Khallid and the demands that Farrakhan cut him loose. Here's one particular one of those. Remarks by Farrakhan aid jeopardize alliance of black groups. So now, since they had agreed that they were united, the black groups were united, now they're now watching how well have we disunified this unity by using the comments of Khalid Muhammad to make other non-Khalid Muhammad people change behavior. Meaning that they never went to Khalid and said, will you change your behavior? No, it's not about him. And when they were attacking me, they never came to me and said, is it about you changing your behavior? No, it's about getting everyone around you to do what's necessary. They're leaving you in the center. And then after they get everybody around you, then they come in to kill you. So the process of killing you. No one bought this tape since I've been here, and I was intrigued by how the Jews tried to kill Steve Copley. It's how when I smelled them pulling the wagons around my ass, I shot everything standing. I'm still here today. This was in '88. I made this tape in '88. How the Jews tried to kill Steve Copley. And the point of that was that you just can't up and do a shooting. You got to set it up. And you can't be effective with personalities that are known by others where you can't control reaction unless you set a scenario to control reaction. And so preparation is done. And so you have a whole series of things. Now you've got the whole country dehumanizing Brother Khallid, and then you have statements like this from Ben Shavis. Did Khalid Muhammad's speech fracture the emerging relationship between the Nation of Islam and other groups? The answer is yes, said Ben Shavis Jr., Executive Director of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Quote, is this fracture inseparable? My answer is no, particularly if Minister Farrakhan will speak out in terms of the Nation of Islam as not being committed to anti-Semitism. Now, it's the same Ben Shavis who was bit by the same forces he was out fighting booty for. See, I tell you, and I tell you now, no matter how hard you work for them, when they don't like what you do, they'll bump you. They don't care. And here's Ben out front. He and Jesse were in the forefront of saying, hey, Shag, now, minister, come on, cut that Khalid loose. Whoever asked for the minister to cut Khalid loose was in on the shooting. They may not have understood their role in the shooting, but surely it moved the track too when the pressure went on the minister. Pressure so great, he did cut him loose. And then that escalated the assassination attempt to a higher phase because now he was being isolated, and then came the Donahue show where you were supposed to put him down and piss all over him and get them little Jewish soldiers out there with the hat and what do you, look out in the camera and tell me what you want to say to Miss Cheney or Werner or whatever, who it was. What do you want? I don't want to tell a damn thing. That's what the brother said. I ain't telling the shit. And you ain't gonna make me say shit for her either. You little Jewish soldiers out there, get your ass out of here too. I mean, he just, attitude was good. I say, no repent. So you're right. And then the process starts going about those ambiguous security arrangements where no one wants to be associated with somebody whites don't like. That's a very, when you step off of someone because the white man don't like them, you are the enemy. Because the enemy's feelings are acted out by your behavior. You can't be doing it in the good of fighting anti-Semitism or up in race relations, because there's so many other unmet moments for equality and justice that to pick that one is so low on the totem pole, your spirit is out of order. Anyway, so in an article, and you'll find, my only point is for the theme's sake, you'll find tons of articles in that theme around city to city. Every person being, what do you think? I don't think it's good. Senators, congressmen, mayors, state representatives, county officials in every city. In your newspaper, they start walking around asking, Mike Wu is out there on it, and everybody's got a comment out there to throw shit on the setup. And then on this side, Wesley decries a book about Jewish onslaught, and then on the other side of the page doing Tony Martin. Now, again, these are all laying climate work. This is now January, February. Is the ADL anti-black? Jewish group has history of character assassination. This is the final call doing a story on the ADL. I was quoted in that story. Haven't been attacked by the ADL. See somebody in there you know good, Doc? So you're right. This article basically said the ADL ain't no good. And it ain't. Also was an article in there, blacks angered over attack on Jackson family. I wasn't. Let's see here. Got another series of articles that are coming in the February period. These articles, of course, again, were in the process of bringing forth, many of you all remember this. This then came out in February as they put the pressure on the minister. Minister of Rage. I remember going into the airport, I don't know what city I was in, even Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the whole damn wall had this cover setting up. I mean, from the floor to the ceiling, layers of that article being laid out on the thing there, and I was just stunned by it. And the whole article is a series of things. This story here is February 28th, 94, February story. Any of you all know the exact date of the Donahue show? That'd be important. We actually need a timeline here. And anytime you're dealing with events or eventually you need a timeline, a calendar of events, a process. I'm not sure exactly. I just don't remember. I thought it might have even been in March. February seemed kind of soon to me. I'm not sure. It was after the Holocaust meeting in Howard, because I remember them asking me if I wanted to come to New York maybe a week or so after the Holocaust program in Howard, and I think that was maybe even in March. I'm not quite sure. So this was a whole thing, and you know they had that painted face and stuff, the way they set that up. It's just loaded with our pride and prejudice. They just got a series of ugly articles. Interview with Minister Farrakhan. They suck the life from you. Talking about the bloodsuckers. There's a picture of him standing there playing the violin in his house. And a picture of the outside of his house. Yes, Sister Lisa.
They also got, if you notice, the profile that they did on the story that they had ran about the pro-MAGA man.
Right.
Same profile.
Now, again, does anybody remember the date Khallid was suspended?
February 26th.
I don't know. Huh? We'll find it in the article here, but you might not have seen this. This was the New York story. Now, this is dated March 1st. In fact, this was big controversy because now there's a big lawsuit over this. New evidence, Farrakhan connected to Malcolm's assassination. Now, find out what day they got him to pull off a Khallid, then check what days they start working on him. Now, digging deep into his stuff, trying to then make sure that he understands that doing this to Khallid is the right thing to do. No, I'm telling you, whites are wicked. This is wicketry. And there's a lawsuit going on about this right now over the allegations. And then I remember, let's see, I was at the G7 meeting, that was March 11th, And that's when the weekend Betty Shabazz came out and said he did it. March 11th, because I remember I went to Detroit. I left LA, went to Chicago, then to Detroit. I was here last week of February, first part of March, and this article compelled her to come out on a New York TV show, asked about the article, and then she made the remark that she made. Now this is all weight building up on the brother. Weight. Now let me just make sure you got it in the camera real good. New documentary could expose Farrakhan. I'm just reading from the backside. It's got names and this and that and a lot of stuff in it. Anyway, this is March 1st. Now, when you really look at this in hindsight, actually, it'd be nice to set these across the wall and then just watch the progressive harassment towards some particular goal. Now, let's see here. What we got here? That's April. Let me find something for you here. Now, simultaneously, Howard University is under attack. This little student leaders at Howard. Now we, into March, now you got the big, this is another one of those separation articles, Washington Times, February 9th. Farrakhan struck preaching to the converted. Black leaders in mainstream keep distance. And it shows Brother Khallid Muhammad with Malcolm on the other side. Both of them with their hands up. It's not idle. With Malik Zulu Shabazz, the Howard student, faded in the background. Now setting Khallid up as Malcolm. Now, unbeknownst to Khallid, he's sent out to fight the X movie. He the man on the X movie. Putting the X in context, saying that Malcolm learned from Elijah, and fighting at the Spike Lee movie. While whites were steadily working off a game plan, might have been written 18, 19, 22, 3 years ago, to set it up, to work it down like this. Brother Osafu, you remember a videotape that you sent to have labeled, and the label you put on that videotape about a movie called Law and Order, a TV show that showed the reenactment of a shooting of Minister Farrakhan. And you remember the brother's reaction to the labeling of the video, which insinuated Khallid as a hothead or somehow. I forget the way the title was, but it was at the house where Khallid was staying. He saw the video and didn't like the title of it, but got to see the piece which showed a reenactment of the shooting of Farrakhan, with a Khallid type person miscalculating the witness, and the white person that supposedly shot him got off. Go ahead, you just say something.
It was, I labeled it the killing of Brother Minister, my brother, the killing of Brother Minister by Khallid Muhammad.
Well, it wasn't by Khallid. It was something. Something that insinuated something, but it's actually not. It's actually was what they were trying to relay in the movie, in the little Law and Order piece. Got to go back and look at that at another point, because it's got a lot of key things in it that actually unfolded. Anyway, this is another part of that process. Here's another story on the students at Howard, as Connie Chung and all of them did the piece on the Howard students. The follow-up to the Howard students piece was showing Khalid's assassination with the big circle around it. I highly recommend that Khalid summary video. It's got that footage on it, some of which we'll see depending on how long you can stand it. This is Brother Malik and Unity Nation that set up the program there, where Khallid had spoke at Howard, that caused Howard to then ban all of us from speaking there, which is still on now. Now remember, I told you that shooting had something to do with the National Security Council. So you don't be surprised when Colin Powell goes to give a commencement address at Howard, he stands up and calls out the messengers of hate, Khallid Muhammad, the Nation of Islam, and all the rest of y'all over there speaking. But remember, he's a guy coming out of the national security apparatus. Now this is 1 week before the shooting. This is May 25th. Not even a week before the shooting. It's some days. This was the Saturday was the commencement address. The shooting was the next Sunday, not the next day. This was this is actually dated the 25th. And Colin Powell spent most of the commencement address speaking against the messengers of hate, like Vernon Jordan did at the Boulay Convention in July. But just to draw attention from the national security apparatus, he ain't in the position, but you never leave the position. You don't know how many consulting contracts he got back into the National Security Agency. Howard is in fact now so timid that they went over to the Israeli embassy, and now they have to check in with the Israeli embassy every month. Is the new president of Howard, Dr. Latner, at the Israeli embassy with a series of what they call it, there's a confidence building. See, whites are real clever. They have what they call confidence building mechanism. So you want to build confidence back in Howard University, having knocked out all the so-called messengers of hate. Now Howard is at the Israeli embassy holding monthly forums on issues to build confidence of the Jewish community back in Howard, that we're officially nowhere near there. Deep shit. Now, this is all now in the aftermath. And Dr. Latner went on a local public broadcasting show in Washington. And Carl Rowan was on there with her, and there's some white, Richard Cohen of the Washington Times, Washington Post, always write the negative articles. We ran him out the front row at the Black Holocaust meeting. If you saw the videotape, he was down front. He had to get up and go because we was getting ready to jump him because he always writing the negative stuff. But in this particular program, Dr. Latner was so weak that Carl Rowan ended up the militant in the program. And he ended up saying he resented the Jewish community coming down there jacking up Howard. Howard ain't on trial. He tried to not say that the speakers were right, but don't jam Howard for it. And he ended up the aggressive one in the show. And that was just the state of the condition of Howard. And then it says, as Colin Powell said, we're not going to let Khallid ruin our reputation. Go back to Howard's reputation. Colonel Howard, a white man, big blue eyes. Picture stands right in the middle of the Moreland. I was the head of Negro Subversion Military Intelligence Section, Spingarn Library. And here, I'm going to pass this around. This is the history of Howard University, how they killed so many so-called Indians there that they gave the white man a college. And it's still named after him, Hunky Howard. And there was a big campaign to get them to change the name. They won't. No more than Spelman going to be Spelman Rockefeller or Morgan. They are now even taking the vendors off the campus at Howard University, and that we could never in a nighttime or years or hundreds of years take away the reputation of Howard and the hunky Colonel Howard who sits in the library, the Moreland Intelligence Community Library. Now, okay, you with me so far? You all right? Need a break? Want me to stop? You had enough? Huh? All right, now, I know by the time I finish, see, I be talking to 2, 3, 4 people. Everybody start wheezing out one by one, and Copley can't sell no tapes. All his tapes up here in the front. If anybody do want to get something for you, you can just come up, drop your money down. Don't have to worry about that. But so y'all just stick with me now. Now, then April had a big page come out like this here. I never was big on this alliance, nor with the LaRoches. I don't like either one of them. This is Frank Newman. This is the man run the New Alliance Party, which is theme called the Black-Led White Finance Movement, which is just what the Jewish community, Rosenwald and the others said when they gave the money to the original Negro Alliance in the early 1900s. The reason I bring this up is that when we really looked, the reason I bring this up is that when the stories came out about James Best, one of the stories you may have missed that I want to show you just in passing about Best is a little article that had a little sidebar about him, and I just gotta show it to you because it's interesting. This was not much discussed. It was mentioned almost as an afterthought. Okay, now jump up here at me now. I know you ain't here. It's an article that appeared in one of the West Coast papers that actually got syndicated around the country. And it talks about Best's relationship with the New Alliance Party. In fact, here is the article. Well, that's the one you can't see. I got to find one big enough you can look at. It's up here. So you're going to have to give me a second. I got these set up by days because it's each day something happens specifically from the first day to the last day. But the article just mentioned that Best was a key member of the New Alliance Party, and that they interviewed New Alliance Party people, and they say, oh, we never would have thought Best would have done something like this. But the reason I show that is that only a month before the shooting, If it was that these things were done through weird type of alliances, to have a big full-page layout like this, the Fulani show, and to make the show good. Now, they didn't beat Fulani up at the Slave Theater, which is a big place in New York. Not beat her up physically, but beat up her little black penetration. And when she's getting beat on, she says, but Minister Farrakhan likes me. And they just pulverized her. Now, also, I forgot this stuff up here. I laid this up here. February, don't want to forget this. February, Muslims get CHA deal. February 13th, Chicago Sun-Times front page. Even so far as the Chicago Sun-Times editorial fighting the ADL for the Muslims to get the CHA, that's Chicago Housing Authority that comes out of HUD. Trilateral Commissioner Cisneros. ADL is overreaching on CHA Muslim deal. The whites believe it's a good idea to buff the aggression from the public housing area with a credible source. So you take a credible source and put them next to insinuating circumstances and make them suppress it, when it's really bent up frustration towards whites. And in that tape, confused, I ain't got but one of them over there because I didn't get a chance to make the tape. I talked about that particular story. Here's another story. Came out in the final call. This was in March 16th. And I want to set this up for the camera. Repudiation game plays in the death plot. And it's talking about repudiation game and playing into a death pot. Remember, Farrakhan does an Arsenio Hall show in there, right, in this period. So we know what happened with that, right? Now we got a whole series of things of people getting knocked out for one reason. Association with one person. Now, what does that one person do when a person gets cracked for the association? It's very important. It was very important whether they help privately, help publicly, or don't help, or what the process is very important. But there's a little caption here about, it says ADL, and it has them with a hammer cracking up what's called the mainstream, and it's trying to indicate that there's supposed to be unity between the nation and the mainstream, but the ADL is breaking it up. It's just an interesting picture. This is March 16th, 94, the final call, and what makes the picture interesting is that the mainstream, loaded with alligators, crocodiles, barracudas, and other things, don't take the ADL to break up. I just ain't gonna swim in it. But the caption was put in as an editorial, and I think that's an interesting caption to insinuate that it would take the ADL to break you up from being around the have a little want some mores. Did you get it? You able to get it? Best you could? Okay. Get it, Reese? Okay. Now, again, these are all stories that fit into a seam of things, all laying down towards a certain conclusion. Okay, we won't need that. Those are the days lined up. Just want to make sure I get everything in here. Islamic leader takes a softer tone, March 2nd. Khallid's already been suspended. The New York Times makes a note of the fact that his speech got a little softer. And there were many papers around the country that signaled the same message, not because they really wanted to report on the speech, but they tried to insinuate that they were being successful. And this bothered Khallid that the article came out. Even say he went to see a Schindler's List, and they had all this whole series of things trying to make it look like he was modifying himself. And that in fact made him rebel to the other end because he got pissed by seeing the article portray him in that light. Now, that brings us up into the assassination. I know I don't need to show you again that weekend at the park, Leimert Park. You all remember African Liberation Day weekend, how the police surrounded the park and what an ugly incident there was as they sought to provoke black leadership. Of course, that's in the videotape. I'm not going to show that again, but I just want you to remember that portion as something leading up to the day before, and that day before being very important. Now comes the day of, and I want to identify briefly certain very key points of contention so that one understands the anatomy of a conspiracy. There are certain things that have to be established to affirm that there's reason to doubt that this particular person best could have operated single-handedly. And I draw very particularly from two white sources, two whites that are unrelated to anything we have to say. This again is the front page of the San Francisco Examiner the day after the assassination attempt. All the pictures, all the headlines were basically all the same. All of them sought to use the same picture. That is, of course, the LA Times and San. These are two major papers in California running the front page analysis of the first day's report of the shooting. But most importantly, in both of the stories are two very important statements made by whites, two different whites, in fact. San Francisco Examiner, the gunman wearing a dark suit and bow tie that is characteristic dress of the Nation of Islam, fired repeatedly into the group, said Police Detective Gary DeVinna. Police Detective Gary DeVinna said the gunman wearing the dark suit and bow tie. LA Times, same day, front page, in red. The gunman wearing the dark suit, light shirt, and bow tie, characteristic of what Mohammed security people were wearing, said UC Riverside spokesperson Jack Chappelle. Wearing a dark suit, light shirt, and bow tie. I'll pass these around to you, and take them, pass them back, because if I was having a trial, them two would have to come in and establish how two different whites came up with a focus of the crime scene, seeing how neither of them were there, but the fact that they came public. Now, this is very important because how you identify a suspect has a lot to do with the destiny of the trial. So here is Bess laying on the ground there at the attempted assassination site, as well as I'll show you them dragging him off the scene with his straight tie. That's Bess's straight tie. You can see very clearly he has not on a light shirt, he has on a blue shirt with light stripes. You can see it in color clearer. And in fact, you can see he has a straight tie. A long straight tie. And there's no way you could have interviewed any of your personnel on the scene who in fact picked him up and carried him off the scene and put him in the car, took him to the hospital, guarded his ass, took his damn clothes off of him. The boy was unconscious. Excuse me for spitting on him. Excuse me, sister, you all right? You need some... I was getting excited and shit. God, excuse me, I was really tired. This shit kind of waked me up and stuff. All right. So what I'm saying is that there's a legal term called prima facie. On the surface, this appears to be true. On the surface, there appears to be a discrepancy in identifying the suspect, but in fact, maybe this wasn't the only suspect. And it's my job to introduce to you the observation that there's a discrepancy in the dialogue, not about what we already know about the brother in the bow tie, red bow tie, which our people saw. We already know about that. We're just saying we can collaborate the discrepancy using white people. Yeah. Not even alone our own witnesses, who Khallid saw the man shooting with a bow tie, the student leader saw the man shooting with the bow tie, other people on the scene saw the man shooting with the bow tie, and they've all given affidavits to the people.
Sure.
Actually, and we said many times, I like to see the police release Best. We think he ought to come back out here. We like to talk to him. But also remember this about the scene. The police did not establish that the backpack that they found at the scene was Bess's backpack. Remember the guy we talked about, the reporter from the AP, who said, remember, he's the first one shown all over the country. We got him on videotape. I saw him, and Khalid's son was crying, oh daddy, and it was a 45. Right. And of course, every single thing established the fact that it was a 9mm. And the man says, well, how do you know it was a 45? And he says, we all know what a 45 looks like. And you all remember on the summary lecture, we had a disagreement in the audience over whether a 45 can look like a 9mm. And that was just interesting, just to show the variance in the dialogue. And so the other thing that one guy did was Turner, I believe his name was, AP photographer, was how they beat Bess and how they beat him and they tried to kill him. Oh, it was terrible. And of course, we know the police left him in the circle long enough to hope that he was dead. And that's why they drug him out the way they did, because they felt he was dead. And that nigga done recovered and shit, didn't draw no weapons, that nigga done recovered. I tell you, that you gonna recover from an ass whooping. That's deep. That's deep. That's deep. Anyway, and I want to pass this out, pass that around. Let's see. Oh, that's two different shots of the straight tie. Now, That's all very important. And just for the record quickly, what you need to do again in establishing the timeline is go, shooting was on Sunday. So you have just TV relaying on Sunday. We have all of the TV information from Sunday. Monday, the newspapers come out. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, no more stories after the 4 stories. In most of the country, they stopped on Tuesday, 2 stories. Maybe a 3rd story Wednesday. But it's specifically the one most absence of news coverage that was the weakest and the frailest was the New York Times, the ones that started it all by dropping the ad in by accepting the ad from the ADL. See, they could have done it as a news story. Speech was 3 months old, so it couldn't have been a news story. It had to be an ad. Anyway, I see some of y'all are nodding and stuff, so I ain't gonna be too long. I know you want to go, and I got things to do. Anyway, California government shoots ex-Nation of Islam aide. It just goes on, same story all over the country. Nation of Islam figure shot. Muhammad is shot after California speech. And I mentioned to you how even the news in Washington, D.C. insinuated he had been shot at Crossroads after speaking at Crossroads, because they kept showing his African garb, saying he was shot after this speech, and that was not what he was wearing. He was wearing a suit and a bow tie that day, not African garb, which he was wearing the night before at the Crossroads. Yes?
I heard, I'm going back to the conversation about the difference between a 9 and a 45. I heard the summary of that conversation, and I want to know if this, and I think if this can be added on. I don't think his brother got to you. He wanted to get to you and explain why that conversation was taking place. And I believe the summary is because there are 45s that are as small and smaller than a 9 millimeter, for example, a Colt Commander. And it's impossible to shoot even a 9 from this end.
Right, shooting sideways, as you'll see best, shooting sideways to control the gun, shooting sideways. And there's just a whole series of things, and I'd be interested to see what level of information the state's attorney and others have accumulated regarding, you looking at, see they got the tapes in the files or something. I'm really interested in what they have, how they are writing up the angle to all of this. Yes, Brother Stan.
Steve, you know, if you shoot at 45, anybody in the service, you know, you take that from the family, when you shoot at 45 picked up, you got to go something over. So you can't hold that, you got to hold that, you got to move at 45. That ain't just no gun, unless you're awful strong, you put out the hold from home. The average person. That's right, it's up.
I thought military.
Like the sister said, new version, there's a new version of 45 Bible. For the most part, some people want to hold what they call 1910 versions of what they call 1911. You got to hold that. You got to put both hands on it. You got to get down and hold it.
Let me do this here. I want to enter into the record this story that was a couple of days before the assassination attempt, May 25th, 94, final call. A new black-Jewish relationship, question mark. Nation of Islam test change in ADL position. Now, we remember this story over here, which established the ADL's position. If you notice, they like to use question marks. Is the ADL anti-black? Of course. Then in this story, as they've changed their position, it says, the invitation came after Abraham Foxman, ADL National Director, told the Chicago Defender, quote, I'm saying now that the Nation of Islam and Minister Farrakhan are not my enemies, and I'm not his enemy. The front page story published shortly after the Black Daily featured an editorial board meeting with Minister Farrakhan and was published April 30th. Days later, the invitation for a private meeting was extended. Mr. Muhammad said the meetings would be beginning a process aimed at developing a proper black-Jewish relationship and an end to the painful public dispute. He likened such dialogue to Israeli-Palestinian negotiations that have yielded new hope for peace in the Middle East. This is Minister Leonard, Chief of Staff Leonard Muhammad is the one called to Abraham Foxman, but that was just a couple of days before the shooting. And I want to enter that into the record. Now, of course, there were a series of articles like this one, was there a conspiracy to kill Khallid Muhammad? Question mark again. Of course there was. And I mentioned to you that I mentioned this out here just the same way, that summary tape. I started off by holding up this final call front cover and mentioned how I didn't like the question mark on the story And of course, when I got to New York to do the lecture, the brother there, Lamont Curry from the Final Call, was there to say how everyone had thought it was so terrible that I questioned the use of a question mark in something that we could absolutely say based on our own documentation. Anyway, so they understood and felt the weight of raising the question. Also, interesting enough, in the L.A. Watts Times, this only appeared in this paper, only place I saw this one comment anywhere in any of the information. Investigation into the attempt on a Muslim leader continues, but there's a little paragraph here that says, all the information coming to us from the news media and official contacts indicate this is a matter within the Nation of Islam. Everything related to the crime is not associated with the University of California, Riverside, except that it happened there. The venue is the only thing that relates to the crime on this campus. This is Jack Chappelle, the spokesperson from the school, trying to insinuate that everything related to the assassination was just a nation thing. Remember this article, Khalid Muhammad, The Real Story Behind the Shooting, by Joe Williams III, saying he saw the man in the bow tie, and he saw Best, he says he saw Best helping Irv Rubin and others put up anti-Khalid posters around the building before the lecture started. And he says, with his own eyes, he says, the press reported that the gunman acted alone. The fact is that I saw with my own eyes the second black man who was protesting with the Jews running away from the scene and speeding out of lot number 24 in a red sports car as the two police cars raced towards the scene. He escaped right between the two patrol cars, which were about a half a block apart. Why haven't this second man been reported by the press? Why haven't they revealed that these men's relationships with the Jewish protesters? And this was a very important story that he came out. I wonder if they ever talked to him, ever tried to bring him to the trial or anything. I don't think anybody talked to this guy since this story? This is the Sentinel, dated June 9th, 1994. It was a very significant story, and it further collaborated the second gunman with an eyewitness. Bodyguard saved Khallid. You remember we talked about who was it that really laid on top of Khalid's body and saved him? And we mentioned that predominantly it was the Bloods and the Crips who took the bullets. And that's a very important understanding in that there were several layers of security there. Yeah, they was whipping on him too. Now, interestingly enough, this guy wrote an article that appeared here in the local paper, Herald Dispatch, Thursday, March 3rd, 1994, written by James Strong, Farrakhan's mistake. Farrakhan should have only rebuked Muhammad privately inside the nation, not publicly before the nation. Very interesting article about the process by which you would suspend someone for internal infraction. You do it internally. And it was always that understanding is that's the way it would be handled. In fact, I think this guy has an article in a recent Final Call, James Strong does, so it shows that they came to understand the value of his opinion. He did what? I believe that it was said publicly that prior to this, there had been another disciplinary action towards him for maybe having done the same things in the past. There was a meeting in Chicago at which it was said that they would publish a letter in the Final Call stating that he had been suspended, and that Khallid states even to this day that he was unaware that there was going to be a public press conference in Washington, D.C. suspending him, and so there was a discrepancy in an internal dialogue, and it'd be interesting to get the essence of that.
But in essence, magazine in an article that the Conrad O'Hanlon, that's the name they keep mentioning. That's kind of like the source who's doing the talking. Like Khallid is embarrassed, asked to the nation. So.
Right, and that leads me up to this story. I was coming up to that. To Kill a Brother Minister, Khalid Muhammad versus the Nation by Peter Noel. And in fact, they even quote me in the back of this story talking about the assassination attempt. This guy seems to have been in and around or heard the tapes of the New York lecture done on the Khallid assassination. In fact, you just need to understand, just in process, I was here doing a series of lectures on the Khallid assassination attempt in L.A., and I left here for a day and went up to Oakland This is the flyer from the Oakland program. I'm showing this up for the camera. This is the flyer for the Oakland program that we did on the Khallid assassination attempt. And we were trying to get to as many cities as possible. This is the flyer when I did the same lecture in Baltimore, Maryland, on the assassination attempt of Brother Khalid Muhammad. This is the flyer from the, this is the flyer I put together out of my squad for the Khalid assassination attempt lecture in Washington, D.C. Also, we did the lecture in New York as well. In fact, Brother Jamal was there. He did the lecture with me. And this is Brother Eric Muhammad in New York on the road doing the same lecture himself. This is a particular one that he did in Baltimore, Maryland just a week or two ago. Also, in fact, we got one coming up in 2 weeks. Tony Martin, Leonard Jeffries, Khalid Muhammad, Aswa Kwesi, Steve Copley, Sherazah Ali, and Malik Zulu Shabazz. This will be coming up September 24th and 25th. It looks like them rappers had them big posses where they all ride together. I think the anti-Semitic dream team gonna start hitting the circle together, and we're gonna start going city to city. They thought they had enough. We're gonna load them up. And interestingly enough, I was walking. I was in Ralph's grocery store Monday. I haven't been out at the oh, actually it was Sunday, and I hear this voice talking over in the other aisle. I said, "Damn, that sounds like Sherazah Ali." Walked to the other aisle, right? She was here for the African Marketplace. It was her. And I did not know the sister, and we had never met. And I said, "Sister," I had the flyer in my pocket. I said, "Sister, I think we're going to be working together in a couple of weeks in D.C. And I said, "I'm Brother Copley." She said, "Oh, yeah, boule buster." The boulets, the damn boulets, the boulets, right? And just goes to show you, without really knowing what other people know about what you're doing, they do understand information that they did not hear before, and they draw on to that. So we had an interesting little discussion as we prepare for up ahead. This particular story spends much time, and let me read the opening to this story. It's from Khalid Muhammad's speech only a couple of months before the assassination attempt. And it says here, "This is one of my most difficult lectures of my life, because obviously and conspicuously, Mosque number 7 is not here tonight. Obviously and conspicuously, they have made a decision, Dennis the captain and others, Conrad the minister, that they would pull the security from around me. They setting me up to be killed. But I can only be killed if Allah permits me to be killed, and I don't believe that it is Allah's will that I be killed. This is difficult for me because I don't want to be apart from the Nation of Islam. That's all I know. That's my whole life. As I prepare for my early morning prayers, I will begin my calls to my teacher, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who's been out of the country. The rumor is that he knows of this. I don't believe that. The rumor is that he told them that it was all right to pull the security from around me. I don't believe that. I have a different relationship than that with him. Whatever his decision is, I can live with his decision. But I'm not going to allow niggas to get in between me, jealous, hearted, chicken-hearted, envious niggas, between me and my leader and my teacher. 16 months before James Edward Best, a purported black Muslim, allegedly opened fire on Khalid Muhammad in a parking lot in California, Khalid, the self-described truth terrorist and former Nation of Islam minister, bared his fears that high-level brother ministers from Mosque number 7 in Harlem, who were fiercely loyal to Farrakhan, were plotting to murder him. It goes on through a series of discussions. Well, this story was so hot. Peter Noel, who did the story, then went on radio in New York, all the black radio stations, and then Khalid Muhammad came on with him, and they debated each other, show after show after show, over this story. This picture was specifically about assuring that, as Khalid wanted to protect the image of militarism, this was in Dallas a couple of weeks before this story, and I'll tell you about the Dallas thing, show you the flyer and other things related to it. But the point to it is that the story brought up that some of these things were brewing before the assassination attempt. And this is something that came out later. Now, when they went on the shows together, the big argument was, who was the source, since Khalid was never quoted in this. There's a source that seems to quote things that are favorable to Khalid, articulating things that appear to be Khalid's position. And it was alleged by the Muslims in New York that it was Eric Muhammad. And as late as last week, they chased Brother Eric Muhammad in New York. And Eric went to the Slave Theater's podium last Wednesday and broke down in tears and says that he believes that they're trying to kill him in New York. This was just a week ago. And in fact, Khallid and I had a meeting about this at the African marketplace, and Khallid was there with him on the stage to cover his back. And it was a very, very tense moment in New York. In fact, as late as 2 weeks ago, Conrad Muhammad has been suspended for a disagreement he had with Dennis Muhammad over threatening to shoot him with a gun. So there's a lot of actions, reactions, and things going on over this, and I'm reporting to you about these things because the pot is still brewing. Even though there was much time spent trying to say there was unity. This is the final call, August 17th. This story is dated, Village Voice story is August 2nd. There was a big testimonial for Khallid coming up in New York. So the week of the big testimonial, this story came out, and the night of the testimonial, this story came out, well, a couple of days after that, from the final call saying Muslim unity bellies media schisms claims. We are in solidarity with each other. They are trying to destroy the nation from the outside. A quote from Conrad Muhammad. A recent unity meeting between Minister Khalid Muhammad and Conrad Muhammad put to rest media rumors that the minister of New York's Mosque number 7 may have conspired to assassinate Khalid Muhammad, who was wounded by a gunman in May speech in Riverside, California. Brother Khallid is my brother. He's one of the first brothers who taught me, said Minister Khallid. The tabloid implied that Khalid Muhammad said that Minister Conrad was part of a conspiracy and is part of a power struggle that wanted Khalid dead. Now this is all after the shooting. And then for you to understand that even though this was the public projection, as late as last week, if someone was writing stories from either of these angles since this time, they will know that the pledged front of unity, in fact, still is deeply buried with distrust amongst brothers. And it's not to say it to magnify it, it's to let you understand as you watch action and reaction still going on, that you have to have the best status report that's possible. And this thing, we haven't heard the last of these activities. I don't understand where this is going, but the fact that it's still going is important for all of us, as something must be done to find a way to compel some genuine unity amongst the brothers. Also, the whites are not finished with Brother Khallid. They want to kill him, and they miss killing him. And since the shooting, they put this out a month after the shooting, they put this story out, his posh pad. This is the New York Daily News showing Khalid's living quarters in New Jersey, insinuating that he lives in a luxurious condominium that's predominantly inhabited by Jewish people. But you can see this is an unusual level of harassment still going on, and have gone to that length. In fact, let me turn, and then you mix OJ all in it too. Khalid's fancy digs, lives in upscale, largely white NAB. I don't even know what that means. What is an N-A-B-E? Oh, oh, sure, you're right. I wasn't hip to the lingo.
What date was on that?
This is dated, sister, this is dated June 27th, 94. This is a couple of months ago. Again, this is right after, let's pick up the date here. This is August 17th. This is July, in July. Hate monger Khallid lives high life in white enclave, or should be cave. Check. Now comes the Dallas situation. This is Khalid's first news interview since the shooting, besides the interview he did in the final call from his hospital bed. He did it with a brother named Bobby Ray Saunders in Dallas, who's really a very good brother. One of the brothers shot with Khallid in Dallas was Steve Washington of the Black Think Tank in Dallas. And Brother Steve was traveling with Brother Khallid after Khallid had come down to Dallas. He was making the cities with him, and he was shot in the back. So they brought Khallid down to Dallas. This is dated July 6th for a fundraiser. And they flew me down, flew with different people in to be there to give tributes and other things. And this was Khallid's first interview about the assassination attempt, and some interesting things said in it. Surely in that brief second you felt fear, I asked Muhammad this weekend as he remained in seclusion at a private residence during a visit to Dallas. It was the first time he had talked to a member of the press about the attempt on his life, May 29th. He leaned forward slightly and with somewhat of a grimp said, "No, I didn't feel fear. I was shocked. I was so surprised I almost felt naive. But it wasn't the gun that surprised and shocked him. As the former supreme captain of the Fruits of Islam, his religious sect, elite security force, Muhammad had come face to face with guns and danger many times before. Quote, when I looked and saw a black face," he continued with a voice of disbelief, "I was shocked." Muhammad, the former national spokesperson of the Nation of Islam, had always expected that if any person who would try to kill him would be white. He was removed from his post as national spokesperson. Media attention as well as condemnation by the nation. Muhammad is now alternates between use of crutches and wheelchair. I asked Muhammad if he thought that his close call with death was a sign that he should tone down his often vicious, hateful, and racist speech. Declaring that the above-mentioned adjectives for his speech were inaccurate, he said that the violent incident, quote, makes me more resolute, dedicated, and committed, makes me even more stronger warrior for the liberation and salvation of the black nation. Muhammad credits his survival to divine intervention, noting that he entered the gymnasium and exited through the front door instead of the secured back door that he had been designated for him to use. It is believed that the gunman had originally set up behind a fence from that door with a clear shot at Muhammad's heads. He theorizes that the gunman had made adjustments at that point and that he would be dead today if, quote, Almighty and the spirits of my ancestors hadn't intervened. Police believe that the gunman acted alone, but Muhammad continues to say that they, when he refers to the episode, quote, when there's an assassination attempt, we never rule out anything. He said we must explore all avenues. It's clear that he thinks there was a conspiracy, but by whom? Quote, it could be the Jews, the Israeli Mossad, their CIA, or even the United States government, he says. Muhammad says that members of the Jewish Defense League tried to post bond for the accused gunman. University of California Riverside police say a known JDL activist appeared at a news conference surrounding the shooting and said that he was trying to raise bail money, but the police did not take him seriously. Muhammad also maintains that when Jews who had tickets to his speech resisted body searches, which is common at Nation of Islam events, he personally searched them, removed 2 large knives and one knife disguised as a ballpoint pen. Since I left you last and re-examined that film, there's one point when Khallid is, right before he searches them at the entranceway of the Riverside Auditorium, there's one point where they're out front and Khallid points and says, get him out of here, get him out of here. He points at the police, and there's a little circular thing where they get up on Khallid and the police are up there and the nation is up there and the Bloods and the Crips are up there and they're all standing together. It looks like they're getting ready to fight. And the white boy that had the penknife, who I did not know had a penknife, I just identified for Brother Khallid that someone reached in their jacket and was about to pull something out. And surely enough, when he saw it, that was the man that had the penknife. And you can see him. Forget time to set this up. It depends on how long you can stand it. I see them eyes all half masked. I know y'all tired. White man's gonna have you in a few hours. And everybody gotta get home, prepare and shit. Brother Coakley will be up all night tonight, all during the day tomorrow. Just cause I'm reporting right now, so don't get caught up in me having to do mine, and you worried about doing yours. Anyway, but you'll see the guy reach for, get ready to go to his collar, and the police jumps right in, and then he lays his hand down like that. And when the brothers actually saw that, they were stunned, because if the police hadn't showed up just a second or two later, what would he have gone on and tried to do? And shit would have broke out right there. Then what would Bess have done, since supposedly Bess had come all the way down from Seattle, over 3 states, to come down there and take a chance that he'd meet somebody on a weekend? That's unprecedented that you would think that you would meet somebody on a weekend. To think that you could find them, that you get all the way down there and they'd be standing there just waiting on you, is difficult to perceive that someone would think that such a thing would happen. Now, interestingly enough, when we're in Dallas, the big Jewish alderman there comes out and attacks Brother Khallid. They stopped the church from hosting the testimonials, the main big church down there. And the brothers, Brother Sims, Dr. Sims, Oh, this is another thing. I think I mentioned it while I was here last. I did. Dr. Sims, he was the brother in the African outfit that you saw in Donahue with Khallid. Well, the week after the Donahue show, his wife was found dead in the bathtub at his house in Dallas. He and his brother do Brother Man comic books. And if interestingly enough, a story about Michael Ortiz, or whatever his name is, they had a multi-million-dollar deal. Now you see Mantis is on TV, right?
What's left of it?
Well, right, but they really would have been Brother Man on there. And they offered him a multi-million-dollar deal, and at the last day of the series of contracts that were signed, they came in with one rider that they put on top of the contract that says, we control all editorial commentary on the activities of Brother Man. And the brothers had to turn down a deal worth over $400 million. And then Ortiz picked up the phone and said he won't do it, and literally threatened the brothers that if you don't go with us, you won't go nowhere in Hollywood. And that's a fact. We can get sworn testimony on that, that they exercise that type of arrogance and control over products in the marketplace. And that's where independent black financing comes in. As you can see, the terms good black people are being offered by whites. Anyway, Dr. Sims and his son, they put together this flyer, since they're good at artwork, and drew up Friendship. They call them the Friendship Six. Those are the board of deacons at the church who decided that Khallid couldn't be there for a testimony. It's a huge church, I mean, thousands. Look like First AME type of thing. Got huge, big old TV screens all up in the wall, because you be so far back, you can't even see the front of the church, the damn shit's so big. If seen, please call 1-900-726-1919. And it was Friendship West Baptist Church. And this was the flyers that were put out all over Dallas to put pressure on them for having turned down the program, which was eventually held in one of the Dallas convention centers, where a black person is the gatekeeper, and they threaten the black people. The brother told me that a week ago, there were still 3 articles on the Sunday paper in Dallas, still in the aftermath of the Jewish aldermen trying to restrict the funding of 3 different black groups who even considered hosting Khallid Muhammad. This was after the shooting.
I drove through Dallas last week and I heard that on the radio.
See, the shit's still going on. Still going on. And I'm telling you, it's really deep. And I'm going to tell you something. We were down there. They said, brother, we need you to come down. They flew me down from Washington like on no minute's notice. And damn, I was all stretched out again. It really messed me up financially. But that brother's life is on the line. That's another thing you got to learn. When a life is on the line, you'll lose the money. It must have some priority about this. And it's just unfortunate that you end up in them situations. But we get down to Dallas, and it's a whole aura of weird shit going on. And guns is everywhere. I mean, you seen the guns on the picture. You seen them guns on the picture in Dallas. That was from Dallas, the cover of the Village Voice. This is in Dallas. In fact, there's a picture of Khallid and I with the brothers and the guns holding hands. Everybody posed for the pictures. We shot this in Dallas this is about 4 a.m. in the morning after the program, had a little reception. And I mean, these brothers had the streets blocked off. Police didn't block off no streets. We didn't call no police and say, can we have a protest? These brothers had with rifles, had grenades, they had tear gas, they had black suits, they had armor on. These are the Black Panther militia of Dallas. In fact, when we had staked out the church, this program was on Saturday. This is about 4 a.m. Sunday. 9 a.m. we will all show up at the church. And they got phones and walkie-talkies and shit everywhere. And we're in the cars, and we get a call saying that their 50 SWAT team has showed up in front of the church. And we said, damn, call the Black Panther militia, who we got staked out in front of the church, and find out what the fuck is this out front, you know? And the Black Panther militia called, and we're in the car phone conversation, ain't nobody out here but us. So you're right. But the brother who sent to prepare for the arrival didn't know that was us, thought that was the police. And them brothers had their guns. See, in some cities, you can have rifles, as long as they're exposed. So in Texas, so you're right. Kansas City, I can tell you them cities, because I've been in them. That's right. And buddy, they was out there. I mean, the guns was everywhere. There was wasn't even a blade of grass out of place. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, the minister had been gone when the speech went down, so he was out of town, Reverend Frederick Hayes III. So when he came back, he gave awesome, this thing is awesome. Brother Ed has a copy, you all can hear it. I mean, he's a preacher. he's kind of, he was, you know, he had his little preacher things, his preacher mannerisms and stuff, and I don't get into that. But the brother gave an awesome speech called Faith Under Pressure. And it was his response, and the dialogue dealt with, sometimes we have, our faith is like a couch, you know. We don't have it till we sit on it. And he went through all kind of analogies, and he talked about Stephen. He went through this thing about Stephen, and Stephen was causing trouble by messing with the kings and stuff, and didn't nobody want Stephen in their church, because Stephen was, and I don't know the lesson to it. Y'all have to tell me the story, but I don't know the Bible that well, but he's quoting the passages, and he went through this whole analogy about why is it people who avow faith don't have behavior that radiates their faith or belief in God. And people are more afraid of the devil than they are disobeying the God they say they love. This is an awesome program. It's a very awesome speech, and very, very deep, some very significant things. And the people, I mean, because the brother had to take on his own deacon board, he threw down on them. He called them, he said, I can't imagine God living inside of your clothes. And he looked back at them. You know, we were standing outside. The one flock went in. We had a whole center section. When we got there, they had about 50 people hosting us. All the TV cameras were there. We had 3 sets of cameras of our own. They had a special section since they knew we was coming. We had been on the radio that morning. Now we going, everybody come to Friendship Church. We're going to find out why God don't live there no more. So they had a special section carved out for us and shit. So the church all knew it was coming. They all dressed up in Afrocentric clothes and shit. It was deep. It was deep drama. But to see the church stand up and say, we're sorry, and that we really do believe, and that if we could take a murderer or a rapist into the church and say, God forgive him, how come we can't take Khallid Muhammad? The tape is called Faith Under Pressure by Reverend Frederick D. Hayes. And I know Brother Ed has a copy. I'm sure he'd make a copy for anybody. Doc, I'll make you one. It's a fascinating discussion, and I was very impressed with the young brother. But this is really about faith. And I made a question of faith about the Nation of Islam on the radio that made many people uncomfortable. For me saying a question about, is God really involved in this? Because I keep seeing man-like decisions. And we're at that era that all we want you to do is be what you say you are. If you say you're that, then be that. You know, if you say you're a dog, be a dog. If you're a thief, be a thief. If you're a clown, be a clown. If you're for God, be for God. But just be what you are. That way we won't suffer from confusion, and we can treat you like you are. We can help you like we need to help you. You know, and I even say if somebody think they got something on somebody and you're doing things because somebody got something on you, then tell us so we can get the pressure off of you by attacking them or correcting those things that they are holding or coercing you about. This must be done. Brother Smalls was down there. In fact, that next day, Brother Smalls, Brother Malik Shabazz, and I did a lecture in Dallas the day after the testimonial dinner. Was called It's a Triple Threat. And that was a whole series. In fact, then they even got smart saying, well, if you want to find out the latest news about what's going on with Khallid, call the 1-900 number. So they end up making thousands of dollars off of people calling the 1-900 number to get the latest news about what was happening with the blacks rather than to hear this total saturation of shit coming from the whites. And it's a good interesting mechanism, too, about having a machine for people to utilize to call in and pick up the latest message. Of course, in July, Khallid's would-be assassin pleads not guilty. Difficult to understand, but he did. This is a very, 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 very important story, and you can see it ain't but that big. But it's a very, 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 very important story. Little bitty story. New York Times. Let me hold it up again for you, Brother Jamal. June 12, 1994. Little bitty story, way in the corner. Just enough for it to be the players to know it was there, but it's not about making big news. You know when it's big news, you're down in the corner, deep in the paper. Page 14, you're down in the corner. Protest on hiring guards tied to Farrakhan. 25 representatives are urging Housing Secretary Henry G. Cisneros to prevent local housing authorities from hiring private security companies associated with Louis Farrakhan, the Minister of the Nation of Islam. At present, money from the Drug Elimination Grant Program of the Department of Housing and Urban Development is being used to pay NOI, a company affiliated with the Nation of Islam, to provide security at public housing projects in Baltimore, Chicago, Cleveland, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh. That's federal money. Quote, as members of Congress, we are concerned about the alarming message that is sent by allowing federal grants to go to a hate group, said a letter written by Representative Peter T. King, Republican of Long Island, and signed by 24 other lawmakers. Minister Farrakhan and his associates have made numerous speeches laced with anti-Semitic remarks. The letter urges Cisneros, quote, to terminate the flow of federal funds from your agency to the security services of the Nation of Islam, end of quote. Mr. King is sponsoring legislation that would authorize the department to deny contracts to groups headed by, quote, individuals who promote bias based on race, religion, or ethnicity. Now, that story was June 12th, only 13 days after the shooting. And I think what this story is really about is, hey, y'all missed him. Now, let's go back to the terms of why we asked for this action. June 12th. Little bitty story. Nothing came of the story, but a warning is in the story. And the warning seems to suggest that unless the behavior is a certain way, grants in all those cities would be taken away.
You don't get it right.
They were here in L.A.
Thank you.
Taken out of L.A.
They were taken out of L.A. And then the attacks on Khallid doubled over again, all over again. It double increased. Interesting. Then, of course, many of you saw it and heard it. This is, of course, now we're getting all the way. This one comes in September. This is rather late. There are 100 more things I could show you before this, but the Emerge story on Khallid. And if you notice, the picture of Khallid on this side looks like those Creo Magnum man stories at the time in Newsweek do about an original man in Africa, kind of make him look like a gorilla situation or something, kind of overlaying it in negativity. Now, this was to be the actual cover of the Emerge, but at the last minute it was decided that that picture was too ferocious. This was the original cover. No, never before has Emerge used a third page to run a full-page story to say, see another story on page 24. They don't run no full. Now this is, they ended up putting Chavis on the cover. Black Unity, Ben Chavis plots a new agenda. This is before the week before he was fired. But that was to be, but whites decided that even a picture such as that, seen by people who may never read the story, is too authoritative an attitude to project after you've already sought to punish the person. Whites are very key into attitudes. Right, symbolism, very, very much so. And of course, the buzz line in the article is Khallid undermining Farrakhan? Then two questions would have to be asked. What are the goals of Khallid? What are the goals of Farrakhan? But as we've always been together, when I first met Minister Farrakhan, Khallid was standing next to him in 1978 in Chicago. And I've always felt that their goals were the same. So in consideration of that, I don't understand how undermining can come into play since we all against the devil. Yes, Brother Ed.
You had a question about the brother who wrote that story, Sylvester Monroe. He was on front page a few weeks ago. Do you view him in the same light as David Mills?
David who?
David Mills, the brother who wrote the unflattered article about Professor Grimm and Sister Soldier.
Anytime you write for Time Magazine, Village Voice, Washington Times, Washington Post, I'm suspicious because I understand that you can't write the real shit. Real shit don't come in there, no way. And if you did write it, you'd be in big trouble.
Because he tried to justify the tone that some of the callers said, you know, why would you write it this way? He tried to justify it and say that Time Warner didn't have anything to do with the article.
Well, you need to know Sylvester Monroe wrote this story too. He was one of the main authors in this story.
You wouldn't answer the question. You wouldn't answer the question. Where's Cliff?
Well, Cliff's not here tonight.
Cliff asked him something, and he skated around. He was there.
Yes, Jamal, and then Brother Safo.
Just for the record, he was invited to be here tonight. No response.
I don't think he would come. Now remember this now, a nigga wait all his life to get to Time Magazine. You talking about the epitome of establishment media. You don't be fucking around up here on no Florence and 26th Street and shit. Getting within Coakley's reach. You ain't do no shit like that. Because you don't want, see, this is how I know whites are. When Du Bois came out and did the closed ranks editorial, and I need to just show you this for the record because I mentioned this on the radio, and I said I was going to explain it to people, and I never got, never got much of a chance. But this particular story called Closing Ranks that appeared in the Journal of American History, and I want to read the date to you, W.B. Du Bois and World War I, and the date is June '92. That story had an interesting byline in it. It says that when Du Bois came out for the war and told Negroes to bury their disagreement against the whites in America to help them win World War I so that they would come back and free the black man, when he gave the closing ranks editorial, when he knew he was going to get a commission, he's 55 years old, couldn't even pass the physical. Now he's getting ready to be a boy was a major general. He was going to be the one under that, whatever that is, the lieutenant colonel or some shit. And so he knew he was going to get the commission. And privately, this had been done together. He comes out and gives this editorial saying, you know, let's not bring race up, let's get with the hunky. And what's fascinating about that is that the blacks condemned him. Some members of the NAACP got in his pants, called him a traitor. Around the country, they call him a traitor. So the white boy called in Spingard and says, look, you bring me this nigga Du Bois, and you tell me he gonna be my spy. Well, he's ruined himself with his own people. I don't have any need for him anymore. And they broke the deal. And Spingard ended up having to go to Europe. But the key thing to that is that the whites look to see if you have value with your own people, to find out if you can be used by their people. And if you get ruined with your own people, then they drop you because they can't hold you. They can't work with you. Right, they can't. You can't bring them something. And it's just intriguing how whites saw that angle. That was just an interesting sidebar to that. Yes, I'm sorry,
It's okay. The tone of the article, I did read the article by Sylvester Monroe, and he made reference to that within the nation there's conflict as far as them not really being behind Brother Khallid Muhammad. But he was making it from a perspective of a historical perspective. He never brought up the Freedom of Information Act, like for example, looking at the Jewish factor, John Ali's involvement with the Coast Guard and going right in with the government into the Nation of Islam, like number 2 or 3 men how high up. And they never made mention that they had agents within the Nation of Islam from day one. And he just made it sound like they just had conflicts. They never mentioned the agents within the nation.
Interesting, and here's a picture of Bess right here at his arraignment. You should see, looking pretty damn healthy. He didn't recover from that ass whooping. And that's what Khallid said. Imagine you shot a blood, a Crip, and a Muslim. Where you gonna go in jail? You ain't got a piece of sanity.
See, because if he can't snitch, he can't snitch going on the yard. He can't snitch, he can't stay on the yard even if they put him in protective custody.
Deep.
So his life ain't worth the time.
Right. That's why we want him out here.
You know, in or out, you know. If they send him to Folsom, they put him up there in Folsom, up there in OA. They're gonna get him. If they send him to Solid Center, they're gonna get him. If they send him down to the North, if they send him to Tracy, he's in trouble. If they send him to Pelican Bay, you know them dogs gonna send him out. So now he done turned the tail. He got problems. He got a lot of problems.
That's deep. Interestingly enough, the ADL, the LaRoches came out with this little teletype report dated June 1st. ADL investigated in Riverside shooting. Now, the ADL was responsible for trying to get the Riverside University police not to allow there to be searching at Khallid's lecture. Now, that's unusual because it's understood it is principle and process that at every lecture there is such searching. So to have requested such searching is unusual. The fact that a compromise was worked out in response to that even is double unusual. And it resulted in the Nation of Islam not being allowed to do the search, but that the Bloods and the Crips in the black uniforms, in fact, did the pat searching. And some of the brothers in the nation were dressed up in other clothes and did some of the pat searching, but the fact that that was requested was unusual. And the ADL also did the ad so we can understand ADL's mutual involvement. Then you have the LaRoches doing this report on the ADL's involvement. The only problem is this. When I left here and got back to D.C., I got a call from Brother Brock. You all remember Brother Brock, a very controversial elder who came here once to have a meeting with some white supremacists on LeGrand Klieg, and LeGrand ran for governor. He's from L.A., and he was having a meeting out here over the, I forget what the meeting was. In fact, I almost went there that day. And they were marching out front. Maurice shot the film. I saw the film from the program inside and out. 91st and Figueroa, a fascinating day. It was all over, all of the information everywhere, big deal. Brock called me up and he said, Brother Khallid. I said, yeah, Brother Brock. I see him in D.C. a lot. He hangs around the spotlight people there. And there's a whole group of people that hang around the Falanis, the Roshis, the Spotlighters, etc. And Brock says, you know, I was with him. I hear you doing an investigation in the Khallid thing. Now, it's funny how people hear things. And he says, I know, you know I was with him the weekend before the shooting. And when you're doing an investigation and someone wants to tell you something, your role is to facilitate them doing it. And I stretched it a little and I said, yeah, I did see that. I did hear about that. That I heard that you saw him the week before the shooting. And I actually thought he meant Khallid. He said, yeah, man, that Bess wasn't like anything you would imagine. I said, what you mean? He said, I was with Bess all the weekend before the shooting. In fact, he wanted me to drive down with him from Seattle down to L.A. But my plane ticket actually was going out of San Francisco, so I didn't ride with him. I said, you mean a week before the shooting, he told you he was going to L.A.? He said, yeah, he said he was going down there to take care of some business. He tried to get me to ride with him. I said, well, brother, now he on my telephone, we in D.C. Now the police on the phone, now, and since the police helped do it, National Security Council, the rest of them, now I'm going to put some pressure on their ass. I said, well, did you hear him mention the government or the police? You see any guns or anything? In fact, I have my notes from his interview. Now there's some parts of this, I tell you, I'm going to tell you honestly, there's some parts to this that I really don't want to talk about. It's some real touchy parts to this shit, and I don't see it, but I know it all. I just was going to find a line or two I remember, but some interesting shit got to start linking up. Just strange how shit happens. I listened to him tell me that he had worked with Bess on many occasions in the past, and that most prominently he always saw Bess at the LaRoche meetings. He said he sees Bess in Washington, D.C. He said, Steve, he's been there many times. You might have seen him before. I said, no, I ain't never been in them spots that you be going to. And he starts trying to describe him. That's why I seen his pictures and stuff now, but I know what he looked like. But he tells me that every time he sees Bess, he's with Dr. Ali. That was interesting. I had mentioned when I was here that I was searching for who was it that built up or dehumanized Khallid. See, before someone is assassinated, they must be dehumanized. So someone had to be up on him like a guru, dehumanized, like, man, get that guy. Come on, man. Somebody would love it if you did that, you know. Getting up on him to pump him up. And I was asking for who was doing the pump up. And within a week, this was like on a Monday or Tuesday, by the end of that week, I was in Dallas with Khallid, where he delivered to me a message that had come from Minister Farrakhan responding to the tapes. The message was, you tell Steve that I am doing the best. Chicago. The word comes that we're trying to get to the bottom of this, and information was given to prove that intentions were correct. And I honestly believe, and I said that during the lecture, that I don't believe Minister Farrakhan had anything to do with this. And I believe that the love between Farrakhan and Khallid is supreme, it's excessive. And in fact, there's a relationship between them two that's unbreakable. But I do believe there are people in between the two of them, and I stated that in the tape, and I was very clear about putting focus on it, and I put pressure on it in a loose sort of way. And responses were made in several sorts of directions, and in that process, and this is part of the way reality works, and in the part of the process, several things started to weave together almost strangely. Brock tells me that he was shooting a TV show in Seattle, actually in Portland, and Bess and his guys came with him and hung out with him at the hotel that weekend, all that weekend together. In fact, he promised to give me a tape of the show. I was supposed to meet him at the Howard Inn that day at 12 o'clock. He was going to give me a tape of that show from Portland because he wanted me to see it, and said he had some other Best tapes that he wanted me to look at. He thought Best was really a good man. He said he ain't in all that old Muslim stuff, and he had different opinions about it, and he didn't think a whole lot of Khallid, Brother Brock didn't. And so it was a little thing in there. I could hear a thing in his dialogue about the situation and describing it, etc., that almost made Bess a victim. I've listened carefully to people who tried to make Bess the victim in all of this. In the early moments after the shooting, it was perpetrated that Bess was the victim of evil Khalid Muhammad, who didn't die when they wanted him to or something. And remember, Jack Ruby said the reason he shot Oswald was on the perception that they were going to make him a hero after the shooting. And that was intriguing as well. Now, so he goes on to tell me that Bess, I said, you know, Bess got some money, strangely, but I mean, he said, well, Bess would make money using his TV shows. He would, he's on cable access, but he pushed commercials, and the people he'd help give him money. He said, I was on his show 3-4 times, and I give him money. Now, Broccoli getting his money from them Spotlight people, which is the right-wing boys. Now, let's bring in Eric Mohammed, who's at the Black Holocaust Council. When Khallid was on Donahue's show, the phone number of the Black Holocaust Council went across the screen. Brother Eric showed me the AT&T phone records. At the end of that show, there were 13,000 calls on that number within 7 minutes.
Damn.
13, and then it showed over the days the series of calls as you saw the call line fade down, but AT&T knocked the line off and they never got the calls, and AT&T's backup system for the calls didn't catch the calls, so the brother lost all those requests for the tapes. AT&T give them their money back for that month, saying we botched the service, but here's the service feedback, which was probably 1/1,000,000th of the requests that were made. And that was really heavy. That just shows you when you're using their things, how their things don't work when you really need them. That's a real key. And this is the same Brother Eric who felt that his life was threatened, that last Wednesday at the Slave had to go to the podium and say that they are trying to kill him. Somebody's trying to kill him. Black Holocaust Council. Oh, this is that article from the Daily Challenge in New York, June 3rd. It says, earlier this year, Bess was a delegate to a convention of independent political parties aligned with the New Alliance political party of Lenora Fulani. So you got Bess with Fulani and Bess with the LaRoches. Now, when Bess went down, they took his wallet and stuff off of him. Anybody here from the police, the state's attorney, or whatever, I tell you this, if y'all go check property, y'all ain't got shit of Bess's. And I seen his driver's license, I seen his calling card, I seen his kids' pictures, I seen everything in the wallet. I seen it with my own eyes, subsequent to the assassination attempt. But I know that that calling card wasn't in Bess's name. There was a list of calls on them cards. And in the tape, I'm alluding to things that we're following up on, but I can tell you straight down, we need to find out who Miss Stekovich is. That was the name on the calling card. And I called the lady up myself. And she answered the phone, and when I started to ask her about her particular card and why it was in Bess's, she said, oh no, I'm not the lady, I don't know the lady. And she went through a whole thing, but she wouldn't hang up the phone as she listened to me as to hear what I was saying, and I'm sure she was surprised that someone called her. She know the police ain't never called her because they don't know she exists. And who is she, and does she operate in one of these groups? We'd be interested to know. We mentioned several things about Bess's money and his new car that the police let him back into when he got locked out of, etc., etc., etc. We can go back to the hole in the fence that the police never knew was there, but they said it was no problem, though they didn't know it was there. And we can just go on and on and on about these fake build-ups to disguise or hide certain things about this that they chose to. I was intrigued by how many of those things unfolded. Now, of course, subsequent to this, Ben Chavis, who had been in the forefront of stopping Minister Farrakhan from speaking at the March on Washington, it was Chavis that told him on behalf of Rabbi Saperstein that he could not participate. And they attacked Chavis, and at the Black Caucus, Chavis said he didn't appreciate being attacked on the front page of the Final Call. After 2 months earlier, and at the final call for unity, as they was in Gabon, there was disunity in September after the August March attempt. And then there was a back caucus, there was unity again. And in fact, just a couple of weeks ago, there was another story, and that story is unity again and again. Never again will we be separated again. And I'm just looking for a cover of a final call. Oh, yeah, here's another set of stuff. Let me just add this in. You all remember that right after the shooting, oh, that's the one in Richmond, Brother Farrakhan went and gave a speech in what city?
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas, Nevada. And at that speech, it was some interesting dialogue stated, none of which had anything to do with Khallid Muhammad, which was unusual. And 6 days after his former spokesperson was shot, LA Times, June 5th, 94, Farrakhan did not comment directly on the ambush, but said, quote, "We live in such a dangerous hour. To hurt people because you disagree with them is totally unacceptable in a civilized society. There's nothing civilized about this hunky." Farrakhan spent much of his speech addressing the much publicized criticism of him. Blah, 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 blah. To be a racist to me is to be one who promotes his or her race as superior to or better than any other race. That's wickedness. To be a racist, this quote, to be a racist to me is to be one who promotes his or her race as superior to or better than another race. That's wickedness. Farrakhan spoke for several hours. In a thundering applause, he rallied against depriving other human beings of their rights. Although I want to see black people uplifted, quote, I will never resort to evil to uplift black people at the expense of others. He also described the notion of him being against white people as silly. We've done nothing to keep white people from being successful. Da, 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 da. Anyway, so that was the June 5th speech in Vegas. Now, at that speech, old boy Earl Rubin go down there and actually meets with Leonard Farrakhan and tells Leonard Farrakhan that he really likes Minister's Torchlight for America program and sure am glad that that Khallid Muhammad in the hospital, because he was still in the hospital then. And Earl Rubin, as you know, then left here because the next thing was the summit in Baltimore. And I got a whole series of articles. Blacks say unity seems a bit closer. June 15th. There's Sharpton, Chavis, and Farrakhan. Now, I've been told there was a meeting at this summit between Sharpton, Chavis, and Farrakhan and Jesse Jackson, where it was alluded to that apologies were made for having caused trouble for the leadership for being overly aggressive against whites. I wouldn't want to believe that such a thing was so.
Who is Leonard Farrakhan?
He's the chief of staff of the Nation of Islam. You got to go, good brother? Go, okay, you can come on around the front. Come on, it's no problem. This is Leonard Farrakhan is the chief of staff. What you want to say? Somebody's in there? Oh, you can come on across, no problem, brother. A few no-shows, but Farrakhan and Chavis are side by side. Summit ends with vow to meet again. Leonard Farrakhan is the chief of staff of the Nation of Islam. He married the minister's daughter, Donna, changed his name from Leonard Searcy to Leonard Farrakhan. Eventually, he received his Muhammad and is now known as Leonard Farrakhan Muhammad. Then he created the position chief of staff because there was no such position. And I could add some more things, but I ain't going to do that at this moment.
You had a Verge article that's been talking about Jesse not coming to the first couple of days of the summit.
In fact, that Jesse discouraged people from coming until he saw they all went, and then he showed up. That, which is devilment in his own right. Excuse me. Minister Farrakhan visits Nevada, condemns violence. That was the Sentinel's article on that speech. Then, brother, June 10th, he left Vegas and then went to Richmond, Virginia. Farrakhan here tonight for first time since '83. I came into Richmond right after that speech, and that was the speech where they said they found the bomb in the building, but actually it was a hollow cylinder, and most people that looked at it at that moment knew what it wasn't, but making it a bomb made this story. The whole thing over whether Farrakhan should be at a summit, at that summit, led to a whole series of stories. To invite Farrakhan is to invite racism, anti-Semitism. The NAACP embrace of the Nation of Islam leader will in the end harm black people as well as Jews. Michael Lerner, of course, LA man. Deacon. No, this is Lerner, regional director of the ADL. No, that's right, you're right. This is the Michael Lerner. Yeah, this is the Tunkin man, you're right. In fact, I got a picture of him I got a picture of him right here on the front page where old sellout Cornel West was at the summit in Baltimore, and there he is outside. He went outside and hugged his Jewish friend, Michael Lerner, who was out there demonstrating. But the unusual thing is that Herb Rubin went there and demonstrated on Lerner, but demonstrating against Farrakhan. And I got a tape. My buddies in Baltimore got up on Herb Rubin and interviewed his ass. And I forgot the damn tape because I forgot it was on the back of a lecture I did in Baltimore. You'd be shocked to hear some of the shit he was saying in the tape. In Baltimore, being interviewed by three brothers who he didn't even know from shit to Shinola. But that's Michael Lerner out there with Cornel West, and I got a video of this. He's all hugging him and shit, my Jewish brother and shit. There's Leonard Farrakhan, there's Leonard Farrakhan and Minister Farrakhan in another picture of the summit. Said they had infrared helicopters and bomb sniffing dogs and everything to protect them. Farrakhan presence stirs up waters at NAACP summit. They call it NAACP summit. I wonder what it's called. Ain't NAACP summit now. Forget Farrakhan, New York Times. Same series of stories dealing with telling somebody you can't be at a black meeting. These are all whites telling blacks you can't be at a black meeting. And of course, Farrakhan speaks at Richmond. Farrakhan stresses, quote, cultivation. Device found at Coliseum believed harmless. And those were a small series of things dealing with a few things that operated after that. Of course, the current final call deals with our black leaders and organizations really ours. And of course, that raised an interesting question because when you go on back to the Ebony 100 or this or that, you end up all back in those same interwebs, all of which adversely affect us. I'm going to see if I could get something on here for you that remember the night we were at the Good Life and the white guy shows up who we see in the film as having been at the crime scene, which was highly unusual. That such a white guy can just show up. But he did. Somebody's got to help me here. I don't know if I got this going on right. Brother Brad, what was in that bag?
I got the good bag, the better bag.
Oh, okay. Is that this in here? Count that for me. Oh, okay. On the let's just no wait a minute. Let me do that. Let's just push it forward. There. On the beginning of this tape is Arsenio. Yeah, let's let it just run forward. On these videotapes, just a couple of small things. I don't want to keep anybody any longer than they have to stay. I really wanted to use the dialogue to line up the information in a way that you would understand that whatever it was that was happening is still happening. And it's very important to keep yourself in position to try to protect against future attacks. Yes, sister?
Yeah, that's what future attacks against anybody who wants to support something they feel is right. What is your say?
Well, part of what must happen is that you vigilantly pursue those people who have discrepancies related to those things, because if they believe they can do those things and nothing happens as a result of that, you only breed it happening again. And that's the purpose of trying to put together a project that put weight on scenarios. There were people suspended and transferred in the nation for unappropriate. And lost his show, no question. No question. A lot of things happen as a result of that. Something you want up here? Come on up here, brother. As a result of that, things happen. I'm going to line the video up. For those of you who want to buy some things, so you can come on up. I'm going to put a couple of these things into the record. So I'm going to be here. I'm not going anywhere. So I want to put a couple of those things up. Let me do that. A couple of things up before you know. I'm not in the pile. Again, let me do this here. I don't want to cause any disruption of any sort. So, like I say, I'm still going to be here. If anybody interested in last night's tape or any of them tapes, I have all of that. I don't really want to create a discomfort for anyone. But I